Major words, you see major words? A Shabba get film style. Shabba get major word style. When major words dead, Shabba just take it up fully.
This forgotten reggae DJ secretly wrote the blueprint for modern dancehall. Reggae stars stole his style and erased his name from history. I tracked down the lost sound clash tapes that prove he was the real architect. Stay until the end to hear the unaired freestyle that left Shabba Ranks speechless. Long before the global success of dancehall solidified in the early 1990s, before Shabba Ranks began conquering foreign stages, before Billy Boyo, Admiral Bailey, and the giants of the era defined themselves, there had been one young man whose style seemed both borrowed from the ancestors and invented out of thin air. No one needed to tell the street corners of Spanish Town that Major Worries was different. They felt it every time he opened his mouth. His storytelling had a wild precision, fiery, fast, packed with imagery, as if his brain generated entire dramas in real time and his tongue simply raced to keep up. Even before he encountered the great sound systems, even before any producer touched his voice, everything about him leaned toward destiny. But destiny in Jamaica rarely arrives politely. Sometimes it steps off a plane wearing sunglasses. When Clinton Lindsay landed in Jamaica that particular year, he was already known as the promoter, who moved talent across continents like chess pieces designed for arenas. He had made a name for himself, flying in the hottest artists from the island to perform in American venues, and word of his movement spread quickly through local circuits. Major Worries, then still sharpening himself in Spanish Town's raw dance culture, saw an opening where others saw a distant figure. He sought out Clinton Lindsay directly, introduced himself boldly, and unleashed a demonstration of skill so sharp, so rapid, so confident that Lindsay couldn't help but pause. Here was a young DJ with no major platform, no established alliances, yet performing with the composure and force of someone who had already conquered multiple sound systems. Lindsay understood exactly what he was looking at. Major Worries explained he wanted entry into one of Kingston's towering sound institutions, and Clinton Lindsay, recognizing the depth of talent before him, connected him with none other than King Jammy, the architect of some of the most powerful riddims ever to thunder across dancehall spaces. Being recommended to King Jammy was not simply an opportunity, it was an initiation into a crucible. His camp was overflowing with extraordinary talent. Admiral Bailey with his commanding presence, Chakademus sharpening his style, Echo Minot and others carrying their own ferocity. This was not a place where a newcomer could casually step into the microphone. Every inch of space on that sound system was earned with sweat, nerve, and overwhelming skill. When Major Worries arrived there, he entered an environment where competition was merciless. Microphones rotated among men whose reputations could shatter or crown careers. There were nights when even seasoned DJs couldn't reach the mic. And yet, in that fierce atmosphere, another truth surfaced. Sometimes the gatekeepers themselves recognize a force they cannot ignore. Admiral Bailey, already one of the reigning performers of the era, saw something in Major Worries that went beyond technique. He saw hunger. He saw imagination. He saw the crisp snap of lines delivered at breakneck speed, not as a gimmick, but as a signature. Chakademus, who was also in the camp at the time, noticed the same thing. Together they ensured the young DJ, barely known, would not be drowned out by the sheer scale of King Jammy's competitive lineup. They used their influence to make space for him. And every time Major Worries touched the mic, he rewarded their faith by tearing the place apart. Crowds began murmuring his name before he even appeared. It wasn't long before he became one of King Jammy's chief voices, holding his own beside heavyweights who had already cemented their legacies. People who thought they had heard every possible variation of dancehall delivery found themselves stunned by this newcomer whose flow felt elastic, unpredictable, and cinematic. He didn't just chat lyrics. He stitched scenes, imitated characters, bent stories into sharp angles, and shot them into the air with a speed that other DJs found nearly impossible to replicate. Yet, replicate it they tried. His influence rippled so quickly through the scene that even established performers including young Shabba Ranks absorbed elements of his vocal rhythm, his dramatic phrasing, and his relentless pacing. There were nights when the sound system felt almost dangerous under the weight of his energy. Something about Major Worries made audiences lean forward, tense, waiting. His metaphors slashed, his punchlines detonated. His mimicry drifted from comedic to chilling in a heartbeat. Those who performed after him sometimes found themselves sweating under the pressure of following a storm. Then came the breakthrough. His first single under King Jammy's production, a witty, sharply observed narrative about an alcoholic, released in 1986. Listeners couldn't get enough of it. The humor was sharp, the storytelling vivid, and the delivery wired with kinetic brilliance. It circulated quickly, earning him a reputation not just as a great sound system DJ, but as a possible crossover star who could dominate both live clashes and studio recordings. Yet fame is never an accurate measure of legacy. Influence is. As Billy Mann rose through the ranks in the years that followed, he proudly identified Major Worries as his greatest influence. He credited him openly, even immortalized his tragic passing in No Mama No Cry. Many others whispered similar acknowledgments. Some admitted it publicly. Others quietly absorbed the style into their own. Even Chaka Demus, though his connection was debated, was sometimes rumored to carry echoes of him. Whether or not those claims were perfectly accurate, they revealed a truth. Major Worries had become a blueprint. Not an imitator of those who came before him, but a foundation upon which others carved their sound. Ironically, the era he influenced most, the dawn of global dancehall superstardom, exploded only after his death. As Shabba Ranks stormed international markets, as dancehall rhythms migrated across oceans, as new artists found stages in Europe, Japan, America, and Africa, they were unknowingly carrying the echoes of a young man who never lived to see the world he helped shape. But tragedy has a way of arriving at its own pace, even when greatness is rising. It happened not in a studio, not in a clash, not in any place befitting the scale of the man's talent, but in the middle of a heated argument involving a friend of Major Worries and a plain-clothed police officer. It was the kind of everyday conflict that fills crowded Jamaican nights, sudden, sharp, unpredictable. A disagreement turned volatile, voices rose, tempers ignited. Somehow, amid the confrontation, Major Worries splashed beer into the officer's face. That moment, insignificant to any larger world, became the fuse. The officer, unarmed at the time, borrowed a weapon from another policeman nearby. Instead of walking off the anger, instead of letting the dust settle, he returned armed with bad intent. 2 shots tore into Major Worries, who collapsed into a darkness that refused to let him return. He was taken to the hospital, where early Monday morning he died. Young, brilliant, unfinished. A force of nature reduced to a single moment of chaos that rippled through Jamaican music long after his body was buried. People refused to process it at first. How could someone so alive, so electric, so clearly destined for the global stage simply vanish? Sound system culture lost one of its most promising architects. Artists who had modeled their style after him were left to carry ghosts. Fans who had only begun to understand the magnitude of his ability were suddenly confronting silence instead of future recordings. In the years that followed, dancehall surged into its golden age. Shabba Ranks became the first dancehall megastar on the global circuit. New rhythms transformed entire continents into dance floors. The world began paying attention in ways it had not before. Yet beneath every new hit, every tour, every groundbreaking DJ performance rested the outline of a man whose voice had already predicted that era's arrival. Major Worries had been the missing link, the stylistic ancestor whose innovations became so common that future listeners forgot they had once belonged to someone specific. He never left behind dozens of albums. He never lived to perform across Europe. He never toured America. Yet his influence traveled anyway, stitched into the DNA of artists who carried his fire forward without ever needing a passport. The tragedy lay not simply in his death, but in the knowledge that dancehall's spectacular global rise in the early 1990s unfolded just beyond his reach. The world embraced a movement that he had helped shape, but the architect was already gone. Despite that loss, there is comfort in knowing he became far more than a cautionary tale. His legacy is not preserved in mourning, but in imitation, in the flow patterns he inspired, in the storytelling styles he sharpened, in the electrifying pace that became the backbone of many DJs who came after him. Even those who never knew his name have unknowingly followed his footsteps, practicing deliveries that he had pioneered long before microphones became gateways to international fame. Major Worries did not need decades to leave an impact. He needed only a moment. Every performance he delivered at King Jammy's sound system was a blueprint for someone else's future. Every lyrical blast cracked open a new possibility for the genre. Every mimicry sequence, every twist in narrative tone, every rapid-fire delivery rewrote the expectations of what a DJ could sound like. The world remembers him not for the quantity of his recordings, but for the magnitude of his influence. He became the hidden architect of a global culture, the unseen cornerstone in a movement that would later shake stadiums and festival stages worldwide. Even if he ended in the shadows of a neighborhood conflict, his legacy rose into the spotlight of generations. His story reminds us that sometimes the loudest echoes come from voices cut short, that brilliance does not depend on longevity, that legends are not always the ones with the longest discographies, but sometimes the ones whose spark ignites 1,000 others. And though he never lived to watch dancehall take over the world unknowingly danced to rhythms that his imagination had helped birth. Major Worries lived fast, performed faster, and left an imprint that refused to fade. Now you know the truth behind the sound. Who do you believe carries Major Worries' influence the most today? Debate which modern artist owes him the biggest debt in the comments below. Follow for more stories of the pioneers music history tried to delete.